and welcome to this new video. Today I want to continue the topic I've started on my last video where we have built a house drum pattern. In that video I talk about how important is to pick the right sound and the difference between techno and house drum programming, sound design and stuff like that. I did not cover what happens next when you have your pattern laid down on the sequencer and you have to start to mangle with that pattern, making it better maybe with some effects, resampling and stuff like that. So I have this pattern here, which is the same of the last video, but I've had this loop here, which is a combination of different loop, and I print all the track from the previous pattern in loops, so we don't have to print them now. I want to make this pattern a little bit better in terms of sound and in terms of space. I've covered the space theory topic over one of my videos, so check it out into the playlist of the SP-404 tutorials. There will be also a difference on the effects we want to use when it comes to house pattern. They are, in my opinion, different because we are looking for different sound compared to techno. Again, the key concept will be always a lot more of organic sound, and there are some effects that can inject some organic quality into our sample. But let's start with the kick. This will be an example, so I can't go too in depth per sample, otherwise this video will be too long. I give you my perspective on how I will treat a house pattern. So let's start with the kick. As we notice, the kick is more rounded compared to a techno kick, which is more narrow in the high frequency and a little bit more narrow also in the lower part. It's a little bit more precise, pass me this term. This is more rounded and in a way a little bit lo-fi. So I want to inject some grittiness into this sample here, but I don't want to use the distortion. It's too much. So one thing we can use is the cassette simulator, and let's lock the view, and use the drive which is hidden in the second page of the cassette simulator. We can leave the tone, the ease and the age as they are. And just a touch. Just to give it some presence. Let's resample. Nice, we have our kick, so let's exchange these two. And for this kick, I don't want to touch anything else. I just want to give more presence, because when you will start to inject more sample in there, basses, leads, you can adjust the EQ properly. Maybe you want a bigger bass, so you have to carve a little bit on the frequencies, especially in the bass part, or maybe the opposite, so you can boost a little bit some frequency. So in this stage, I wouldn't apply any EQ or any compression on the kick. So let's do a thing. Let's copy this to this, so we have always a reference. Let's delete. Now we have these three hats, and the first thing I want to do is to pick this hat here, and I want to pan a little bit. So let's use the tremolo on panning. Yes. Now let's resample. Perfect. Now let's do the same thing for this one, but this time I want to change, the wave. Okay, let's resample. And this one, I want just to pan it a little bit. Nice. This is good. So now we have these two pans. We can apply some other effects. And before applying a little bit of reverb, I want to use some modulation to inject a little bit of movement. Yes, this is cool. So resample. Nice. So let's delete this one. And now I want to inject some reverb. This is the original. This is the treated one. So let's copy this one to this here, and also this one to this here. Let's copy. Now we can delete this and exchange. Delete this one. Let's do the same thing for this, but now I want to change the modulation, and I want to add a little bit of noise, and we can inject a little bit of noise. Just a touch. Nice. So let's resample. This subtle noise is one of the ingredients that in the overall picture can make your sample more alive. Now I have my noise. Let's delete this one. I want to add a slightly modulation. Let's try with the flanger. Could be cool. Let's try. Delete this one, and now is the time for the reverb. I've always tried to adjust the time and the level of the reverb accordingly to the space I have into my sample. So in this case, I can use a longer reverb because we have a lot of time between one hit and the another. So nice. Let's resample. Now we can exchange the pad and delete this one and this one. Now let's copy all this stuff here, so we don't have to do it later. Let's do a thing. So we have to create a new pattern. Perfect. This is the original one. Now, so let's continue. We want to use and treat this one. For the snare and the clap, I want to use the lo-fi. Maybe 50-50. All right, the level is 100% and the cutoff is at X maximum. So we can pick different kind of pre-filter, and I just want to add a little bit of grittiness to this just a touch. Resample. Perfect. Of course, we want to add reverb, and maybe in this case, I want to add also a little bit of compression, just to have this thing a little bit more harder on the transient. And now we can add our reverb. Always add an ambience to a piece of kit. It's very important. This gives us an environment which is quite natural. Yes. Cool. There's a lot of difference, right? So let's exchange, copy, and let's delete all this stuff here. Now, yeah. Nice. So let's continue. We have the percussion stem, which is based on two percussions printed together. Now I want to use here the panning stuff. Yeah, let's leave it like this. We have our movement on the pan, and I want to use again a little bit of noise, maybe a little bit more this time. Also flutter. Nice. Again, as always, reverb. We can also use a delay. Let's try maybe a delay to this sample here, because we have space to use a delay. Oops. Nice. We can exchange the two and delete. Let's listen. Yes. This is the original one. Nice. Let's continue again. We have this low tom here, and I want to compress this low tom, first of all, just to bring out a little bit more the transient, but also the sustain, so the tail part. Now we can add a little bit of tone by using the chromatic shifter. Here we can use different pitches to without, or 1 octave. Let's nice. And now it's time to use again the reverb. This could be very long. Cool. Let's exchange and delete the tree. The original one. Nice. Now the low tom is much more prominent. You can feel it a little bit more. Let's continue with the last sample, which is this one. Another way to inject some grittiness and some kind of organic stuff into the sample is to use the crusher. Nice, let's resample. This time, as opposed to use the tremolo, I want to use a chorus just to have a little bit of width. And the last effect, of course, is our reverb. So let's use this reverb here. Yep, this sample, it's a little bit too intricate to use a delay, in my opinion. So it's better using maybe also a long reverb like this. Remember a thing, you have always to use the filter on the reverb. If you don't cut the high frequency and the low frequency of the reverb, you risk to obtain a mess with the sound, because the reverb is basically doubling the frequency. So you are doubling the good frequency, but you are also doubling the subbasses or high frequency, and we don't want that. Perfect. Now let's exchange, copy and delete all the sample here. Let's unmute this one and let's listen to the difference. And this is the original one. Much more powerful and lively. Of course, we have just scratched the surface, because this kind of treatment is what you want to do when you are at the beginning of your session. You don't want to be precise with the EQs or compression or stuff like that. You are looking for a sound. You are looking for your main canvas. As you have just seen, the effects I've used for every sample for this RAM are pretty different, and the concept is different compared to the techno one. where you want to achieve more power and presence because the drum, the kick, and the bass are the focus. Here we want to be a little bit more mellow. The drum, as I've said in my last video, has a different function. It's not the main focus, but it's on the background. It's what is sustain the melodic part. This is it for this video. I hope this little tutorial will be useful for you. And if you are looking for go deep into your music theory knowledge, check my Gumroad page, my new music theory for electronic musician guide that shows you and explain you how you can build chords, scales, and what is a chord, what is a scale, and modes. I've also included cheat sheet for the SP-404. As always, thank you for watching and see you next time. Ciao!